Welcome to this live stream of painting Kairos Fateweaver. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop, BattleField, and the Kairos universe. That's a rough start already. And here's the guy I've been painting for. I'm not entirely sure how many episodes I've been painting it for at this point. I've kind of lost count. So I'm just going to keep running with this until he's done. I got quite a bit of ways to go on this guy. So I figure we're going to dive in and start painting him up. Today I want to do some more highlights here in the body. I started off here doing the wings, the greens, the red, orange, and silvery stuff. And then I moved on to doing the legs. And then last time I did a lot of work here in the body in terms of getting some base body colors down. Then I shaded heck out of it. And I also worked a little bit on the mask that Kairos is wearing. So I want to go back and work a little bit more on the body, bring back some of the highlights and the ribs and the raised areas. And then I want to probably dive in, if I have time, and start working on the head around the mask so I can get a little more differentiation between the golden mask and his skin. I can actually go with some of the green feather look. Because, let me swap over to my painting camera here. What you're going to see when I hold this figure up, here on this leg here, I've already got his little golden knee brace thing that he's wearing done. And the gold color really blends into the skin color I'm using. It doesn't really stand out very well. So for the heads, I'm going to make sure I use a lot of the green feathery colors so I can make the golden armor and golden masks really stand out. But like I said, first I'm going to start here with putting some more highlights back into the raised chest and elevated regions to bring some more color differential back into that region. And as I have been doing for the past few episodes of painting Kairos Fateweaver, I'm going to be talking about going back into the archives of the old podcast I used to do, the Tabletop, BattleField, and I'm going to be digging up, some of the different episodes or some of the games we reviewed and kind of talk about where are those games today. I mean, are they still around? Am I still playing any of them? And things like that. I'll give you a hint, most of them are not around anymore. I mean, we're kind of War Machine is still around, 3rd edition, but it's still around. As is, well, The Hobbit is still around. I think it's the same thing as Lord of the Rings, and I'm peeking a little bit here. Let me turn my audio levels down just a tiny bit. So that's kind of still around, but a lot of the games we reviewed, they don't exist anymore. They're out of print or something like that. But anyway, let's start working here in Kairos. I'm going to be working with the elf flesh color. This is from the previous line of Citadel paints. I'm sure there's something similar out right now. And I'm going to be using the Citadel's dry brushing to just dry brush some of this on the raised areas on his chest and probably a little bit along the bottoms of the necks and the arms. So I'm going back and kind of re-adding some of the highlights I would have lost because I probably went a little too heavy on the shade last time. But I don't want to add a lot of this. So I still want to keep that shade color going on there. So just very lightly dry brushing in some areas. And in the past few episodes of this, like I said, I was talking about some of the games we reviewed back in the early days of the Tabletop BattleField. I dove into seasons 1 and 2 over the past few episodes. Meaning we're moving in here to season 3. Now, season 3 of the Tabletop BattleField was 2009. I believe it was also randomly, by pure coincidence, the International Year of Astronomy, which is celebrated 400 years since Galileo first used a telescope to look up at the stars, and not really stars, but probably planets. He looked at Jupiter and saw moons around Jupiter, and then that whole long story came from that. Which, by the way, it's actually pretty easy to do if you like astronomy. It's just a cheap telescope. You can actually look at Jupiter and see the 4 Galilean moons, and it's really cool. It's a freaking cool sight if you've never seen it. I once was looking at it and realized, I was looking at what Galileo saw almost over 400 years ago, and it just helped revolutionize our idea of the solar system and eventually the entire, our entire concept of the galaxy and things like that, many years later. But it's just really kind of cool to be able to look up and just see that same thing and realize how awesome of a thing you're looking at. So I highly recommend it. Looking at stars and planets with telescopes is awesome. Well, you really can't look at stars too well. But you can see there's some nebulas and some cool other things you can see around if you look up and get a nice telescope. Or find a local star party. Then that way you don't got to buy a nice expensive telescope. Because good telescopes are very, very expensive. But if you want something a little bit cheaper, you can get some pretty nice astronomy binoculars for, around $100. And those can be great for not only looking at maybe some of the closer nebula, depending on what you get, but they're great for spotting some of those comets that are always flying by. But anyway, you probably didn't come here to hear me talk about astronomy, though I could do that if you wanted to. So if you're watching here live on twitch.tv/rockerrobotics, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, not only about what I'm doing painting process-wise, but like I said, I do run a tabletop game company, so I can definitely provide some little more different insights than what you'll often get on comments related to the tabletop game industry. Or if you want me to talk about astronomy, that's perfectly cool as well. I do love astronomy. Though I must admit I'm probably not the most qualified to do that, but it's an option. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, feel free to post comments on the YouTube videos about any kind of random topics that you want me to cover at some point in the future. Just keep in mind that I'm really about, I don't even know how many episodes behind in terms of getting posted on YouTube. So it may take me a while to actually answer your question on a future episode of Painting Kairos Fateweaver. Okay, next up, I'm moving on to using a very small amount of Reaper's Linen White. This is just an off-color white that I got from Reaper's paint line. But you can really use any color that's kind of a bit of an off-color white. And once again, just dry brushing, same thing, but doing a lot lighter amounts of paint and in a lot faster, a lot less pigment, just basically doing a lot lighter than the previous layer and doing less of it. So you're really trying just to get the very peaks of some of these ribs. Alright, so back to Season 3 of the Tabletop Battlefield. Let me pull my phone up here, and I can see what we're talking about. (2009), so we're getting a little bit closer to the modern era by now. Let's see, so Episode 1, that was not... So Episode 1 was not a review episode, that was our usual... First episode of every season was usually us kind of reviewing the games we did last year, giving out some crazy, silly awards, stuff like that. So it was very much a review episode, and kind of maybe talk a little bit about what I might be trying to look forward to this year. So that was not a review episode. Let me see what we got next. Oh, there we go. So that's looking pretty good. Now that's the look I'm going for there. Let's see if you can see it very well on the camera. Kairos is definitely a miniature that he's easy to paint as one piece, but I've discovered that it's very hard to show off as one piece in the camera because there's always something in the way of basically the camera angle and me trying to get a decent brush angle. So let's see. Episode 2, Ryan hates Ruby. Oh dear. Joined by Brian. Who was Brian? Who was Brian? Oh, I remember who Brian was. That was old youth pastor. I'm like, who's Brian? It's funny. I forgot who the host of the show were. Oh dear. Oh my goodness. I didn't know he even played that kind of those games. But anyway, so there was I think it's who that Brian was. I'm sitting here trying to remember who this guy was on, who I invited to my apartment and had on our show. But okay, that was the first review episode, episode 2 of season 3. It was the World of Warcraft miniatures games. Who made this one? This is Topps, right? Because Topps had the license. Upper Deck, other card company, Upper Deck. Okay, so I remember that game. That was a collectible miniatures game. What's a collectible miniatures? I think World of Warcraft miniatures was a collectible miniatures game way back then, but I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So I'm done with some of the highlights here on the ribs and the neck. So I want to start working on the head, because the head here I just kind of went over the basic skin color from last time and shaded the heck out of it, and I started doing some of the paint work for some of the golden armor plating that he's wearing. But like I mentioned earlier with this with the ankle or the knee brace he's got on down here, the gold really blends into the skin color it chose. And I think also if you look at the box art for Kairos Fateweaver, his head is a little bit closer in color to what his feathers are than the rest of his skin. So I'm going to very carefully paint up a lot of green around his heads to therefore go ahead and kind of make sure you can see a very distinct contrast between his feathers, the skin, and the golden mask that he's wearing. So we're going to start painting more of these various shades of green and the iridescent green and stuff like that. And for that, I'm going to start first off with a base of Caliban green. And we're going to follow Games Workshop's little highlighting set of greens here, with Caliban green being the base color. And then, let's see, so where's Caliban greens? Right here, it's a base color. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the next layer of Warpstone Glow. And finally, we got some Moot Green, which is the third kind of step in this shade of that shade levels that Games Workshop has. And finally, what I did here on the back of the wings, to get a bit of an iridescent glow to them, for the final layer, I mixed in some Stormhost Silver with the Moot Green, and that gave it a very bright, almost iridescent glow to the miniature. Alright, so I'm going to be working entirely with my Artificer Layer extra small brush. And let's put down some of the Caliban green on my palette and water it down a little bit. Alright, there we go. That'll be a good way to start off with. So, World of Warcraft miniatures. This came out, and we reviewed it in 2009. This one actually came out in November of 2008. And it was one of those games, it was kind of like, in essence, remember when I was talking about Halo action clicks, its kind of goal was to capture the feel of the video game in a tabletop format. So it wasn't really about creating a different World of Warcraft experience per se. Now, I should mention I've never actually played World of Warcraft. I understand it's an insanely popular game and it looks kind of cool, but I don't really have time to commit to MMORPGs. So that's why I honestly have never played it. But naturally, a tabletop game came out. I was quite interested in it. And let's see here. So the game itself is a collectible miniatures game. I'm fairly certain it's collectible miniatures. I know the starter set was fixed, and that's where Ruby Gemsparkle comes into it. She was this gnome wizard who I think was a main character from the franchise, and is absolutely, actually, the character is fun to play in the tabletop game. But it was trying to capture the player versus player aspect of a World of Warcraft. So each team, each player built, a certain number of miniatures on a team, certain point value. It was really like playing 3 versus 3 or something like that. And you had a lot of the major name characters from the franchise, including Leroy Jenkins. He was the character. You could get his miniature in one of the boosters. And you kind of built a team that worked really well together. So yeah, you built a team that worked really well together. I think it was played on a series of hex mats, and it was very much a video game format in the sense that when a character died, they like respawn a turn or two later. So it really was that whole multiplayer feel. There were objective points that you would try to capture to score points, as well as killing your enemies, and I think you played to a certain point value. It was a neat little game. I did enjoy it. I don't remember exactly what we decided with the whole review of it, but I remember it's kind of fun. I want to say movement tactics in it weren't super amazing, but they're nice miniatures. You had some sort of weird click style like thing going on. I wasn't exactly a click style, but it was but it was a fun game. I did enjoy it, and everybody had special powers. It had all sorts of special rules to it, and all those kind of things.
And of course, do we still play it? No. But that's because the game, I don't know how long the game actually lasted. I don't know if it ever even got an expansion to it. And I think it was it's just one of those cases, you know, there's so many games coming out that it can be very difficult for a game to build up a player base, especially even one that's attached to an incredibly popular license like World of Warcraft. I'm trying to think now. I'm fairly certain I still have the figures to it. I imagine they're not really worth a whole lot. I mean, there's maybe some people who would be interested in picking up some of the miniatures just because they're World of Warcraft characters and they're actually really cool little miniatures. So I'm pretty sure I still have them, and you know, I mean, you never know. It'd be kind of fun someday to dig out some of these old games and try them again. But for now, wherever it's hiding at, it'll probably stay there. I'm almost certain it's probably in some weird box back at my parents' house. Because a lot of the games I don't play because I don't have a lot of room in my apartment, I just store them away at my parents' house because they let me do that, and that's awesome. It's free storage. I'm not going to complain. So that was our first review of 2009 and Season 3. So let's see. Let me get my phone back out here and take a look at how the rest of the season was playing out. So there you go. You're starting to see his head color come together there in this side. And it's definitely given a much more contrast between what's going to eventually become gold, which is the brown regions here, as well as, you know, the rest of his skin color around here. And what is nice, since there's going to be a lot more layers on both the green and the brown, if you screw up a little bit and just kind of mess things up, it's not that big of a deal. You can easily fix any mistakes painting the green over the brown pretty easily. So let's flip this guy's head around, and let's try and do the same thing over here on this side. Still working with the Caliban green right now. And I think that's a halfway decent camera angle, but you get the idea. I'm just painting the Caliban green onto all the feathered areas. What looks like feathered areas anyway, or green skin. So I'm gonna do some shade transitions per se, where I kind of transition the areas around the feathers, going from the yellowish skin color to the greenish feather color. But I'm going to do that later on. That'll be like during the wonderful detail steps or something, because there's going to be a lot of those coming up eventually. So like I said, I haven't really had a clear plan of attack for painting Kairos. I'm just kind of slapping down the colors and painting up the regions as I see, oh, this looks a good idea, kind of a thing. So eventually I'm going to have to go back and really address details. But, nah. I don't need to do that just quite yet. But I still got a lot of just base color to throw down on this guy. He's definitely a very, very detailed miniature. Very beautiful, detailed miniature. And definitely a lot of work to him. Alright. Let's dive back over here. Phone's coming back out. Let's pull up. Let's see. Let's make sure you can't see me type my phone password in. I hope I haven't done that yet on the stream. That would suck. Oh boy. That's right, the phone password isn't used for anything else, so because you shouldn't do that. Okay, let's see here. Season 3, so I say, oh dear, this is kind of relevant to what's going on right now. Season 3, Episode 3 was one of those build filler episodes, which is kind of funny. The build episodes I did for the Tabletop BattleField back in the day, they were really filler episodes. I'm like, well, I have nothing to do this time, so I'm going to have to make something up and try to build something on the fly. So they were very much filler episodes. But it's kind of like one of the things we got known for. If you look around, I don't know, you probably can't find any mentions of it now, but back in the day, if you found people commenting on like what our show is known for, it was our highly detailed, very well shot video build tutorials. We're one of the, I may have been one of the first people to actually do that. well, in the days before YouTube was really an effective platform for publishing those kind of things, because that's what, all the video came from my website. We didn't do when did I start, I don't know when I started doing a lot of like YouTube videos. That was the YouTube stuff came later for sure. Let's see here. I need to be very careful right around this area. So I know the first episode of Tabletop Battlefield ended up on YouTube was season 1. But even then, that was back when it was 10-minute videos, so you had to, break it up into like 7 parts, so it's kind of annoying. And that's why not many of the video episodes ever made it on YouTube. At some point, I started doing the Recon Report and Green Gaming, and that's a whole other topic in itself. But the reason why this particular episode, so I said so like 163 times, is that what it was? 108 times. Oh, it wasn't as high as I thought it was. But when it comes to talking for long periods of time, especially like if you're kind of talking to yourself, like I'm doing right now, you don't realize how often you say things. You have catchphrases that you say over and over and over again, and because you're not really paying attention to yourself during normal casual conversations, you honestly don't notice it. Let's see if I can get a decent angle here. Right around there is about the best I'm gonna get. It turns out, and I guess I tend to pick up on these things. Obviously, when you're creating a podcast like this, I'd have to go back and watch every episode. I know Ryan went back and watched every episode because he was very interested in kind of improving his speech patterns and this kind of stuff. You start to pick up in just how often you say the same stuff over and over again and kind of how silly you end up sounding. And in this case, it turns out, and I still do it a lot to this day, and I'm very careful trying to fight it right at this very moment because I'm very consciously thinking about it. I say the word so a lot. So now, so. I do it a ton. So much, there it is, that in this particular episode, as I was editing it, I realized I was saying it so frequently because I would be jumping from kind of build topic to build topic, because whatever I built this episode, there was a lot of just lots of small, very small steps, and I would keep saying so, do this, so, and I just kept saying the word so frequently this episode, I ended up putting a little counter going. So there was a little counter in the upper right hand corner of the episode that every time I said the word so, I would increment it. And it ended up being about 108 times that I said the word so during this build process. And it just became one of those things where I had to be very careful in the future about how I was talking, because it becomes very easy to say the same word over and over and over again. You notice this a lot with people. Oh no, okay, good. Whew. I almost screwed up the wings right there. I would say crap all the time. A lot of people who swear all the time, just every other word they say is a swear word. It's just, it just doesn't sound very good, especially when you're trying to produce content where you got to talk to say the same word again and again and again. Okay, so that head is looking pretty good there. That's about the effect I'm trying to go for. We got a lot of base green on either side of the head. I will probably have something going on down here a little bit to kind of fade into the green. But like I said, I'm going to tackle that problem later. Let me jump over to his second head, because Kairos Fateweaver has 2 heads, because he's awesome like that. And I'm going to do the same process over here on his second head. We're just giving some more Caliban green down. And it looks like this head has little spiky feathers that go a little bit further back beyond where the other one did. It's a little bit of a different painting pattern, but same basic idea. We're going to put a whole bunch of Caliban green down, and then I'm going to go in and, add some layer on some color and things like that. So I'm pretty sure along here we're going to see some sort of fading and transition to go from the green to skin color, but that's, like I said, that's going to be later. But that's that little story there about season 3, episode 3. Let's call that one your video production lesson for the day. I could talk for hours on all the things about making internet video and podcasting and stuff. You know, if that's something you want me to talk about while I'm sitting here and painting up Kairos, let me know. I would do it. I don't have any. It'd be fun to sit there and share all the wonderful things I've learned over the years of doing this stuff. There's lots of details that are really just not immediately obvious. You don't realize how many little things you have to worry about when you're trying to produce video content, or just really any kind of big project in general. Everything seems so much simpler, and then you start realizing, oh, I didn't worry about this little detail or this little detail, and it becomes an absolute disaster pit. And I think I just accidentally painted over a bit of the mask, but that's all right. I think the mask runs down and back up here to this little doodad thing here, but I don't care. I am going to cut the mask off. Let's decide a point right here. Okay, 1 minute. I'm gonna get the box art out and let me see exactly how this head is supposed to look again. Okay. Why does that's how my head looks different. Huh. I put the heads on opposite. The box art has this head sitting over here and this head sitting over here, but you know, details. Is that gold? Is that... Oh, you know what it is? I see what's going on here. He has a golden mask on, but he also has... His beak colors are actually different, they're a little bit different than the golden mask. So it looks... So where it seems like the golden mask wraps around his face a lot, that's actually his beak colors. So, okay. Change of plans. This is also gold up here. So I am going to just do a little bit of a change of plans here. What it is some of the areas that I thought were his golden mask last time are actually his beak. Alright, no big deal. Let's just go back in, and this is where his face ends, his feathers end. That actually becomes part of the beak. That should be part of the mask up here, but I will work on that in a little bit later. The joys of trying to figure out exactly how these figures are supposed to be painted. Yay. But that's alright. It's easy to fix these things. So I think his skin shows up to right about here or so. And then this is all part of the golden mask that he's wearing. Alright, so that was our, like I said, our video production lesson for the day, with talking about paying attention to what you're saying. It's a very important lesson. Let's see what the next review was we talked about on the Tabletop BattleField. Did I say, yeah, I've mentioned that World of Warcraft miniatures is long out of production. You can still find this stuff around if you're interested, though. I'm sure you can. Actually, I saw someone posting stuff on eBay today and Instagram. And like, hey, look, I have this old stuff from like 10 years ago. And there's like a MechWarrior Dark Age starter set in there. Alright, we need to go to the previous page, and we're going to whatever Season 3, Episode 4 was. There was a time, years ago, where I had every single content for the episode, or every single episode of Tabletop BattleField. I could tell you exactly what it was and what we talked about. That was years ago. And it's like, I don't know. I know I kind of know generally where we talked about things and some of the big topics. A lot of the big stuff might be able to point you to in the general area, but a lot of the stuff is like, I don't remember what we talked about. And frankly, there's probably some stuff on there I wish we never talked about, but you know, can't really do much about that now, can I? I'm always joking, you know, if for some weird, twisted reason I would decide to run for political office, I'm almost certain some episode of the Tabletop BattleField will come up and just be used against me. Welcome to the internet. Everything you say can and will be used against you from now until frickin' forever. Because that's the way we work these days. Whether that's good or bad, that's a whole other topic altogether, but that's just the way the world works. Alright, let's see here. Oh, I see like an episode talking about Nazi ships. That'd be fantastic for have come back up. Pageantry of Purple Space Marines. Oh boy. Season 3, Episode 4. It wasn't a review episode. It was Warhammer Fantasy versus Warhammer 40k. And that was, I think, Brent's first appearance in the show. Jerry came back. And so Jerry was the 40k guy. And Brent was the Warhammer Fantasy guy. And they just had... I would kind of act as a moderator. Having the whole fun discussion of... You know, is Warhammer 40k, which is, you know, what's better, Warhammer 40k versus Warhammer Fantasy. The unfortunate reality is at this point, those two guys, along with me, we don't play either one of those anymore. Granted, Warhammer Fantasy's kind of got blown up. Literally, they blew the world up. Spoiler alert! I'm pretty sure you're aware of that if you're watching this video and like, hey, new Kairos Fateweaver miniature. I'm pretty sure you're well aware the old world blew up. Or froze, or had tentacles crush it, or whatever various people saw, because that's what happened to it. Whether that was that was a good thing or not, it's what happened. So that was not really a review episode, but that was a fun one. There's Brent was making some very high quality jokes about Space Marines and being painted purple and compensating, and you know, big guns, bolters. Because, you know, who needs a 7500 caliber explosive bolt gun, you know, round, unless you have certain things you're trying to, you know, details. Okay, I think that's a pretty good coating of the Caliban base green here for the feathers in the head. Like I said, I'm actually gonna have to go back in here and kind of fix up some of these areas I thought were a golden mask, but they're actually a beak. So that's going to be later on, once some of the details step. But for now, I've got the feathers down in terms of the base color of the feathers, so I can get a nice distinctive color between the gold, the beak, and the headdress things, mask that he's wearing. I think what I'll do is I'll paint the beaks to be the colors of his claws down here. That way they have a little bit of a distinctive color from the skin, because Kairos kind of normal paint scheme is this bluish thing, so dark blue, light blues, and a yellowish beak would really stand out from that. Of course, with my yellowish skin that I chose to paint Kairos in, a yellow beak isn't going to really stand out very much, so I'll probably, like I said, paint the beaks up like his claws down here to give them a little bit of a distinctive look from his skin. Okay, let's continue on the Citadel painting process. Next up is good old Moot Green. Nope, sorry, Warpstone Glow. Moot Green's the third layer. And let's see. I'm going to very carefully, using my artificial layer extra small brush, and I'm going to just layer some of this on. So not going to dry brush on, just giving these feathers some highlights. Avoiding a lot of the recessed areas, looking for some of the more raised areas to just give a little bit of a brighter green color to them. I don't know, I think this area in here might end up being his beak, but for now I'll just put some color down there in case I decide that later on I'm not gonna make it a beak, but you know, like, I don't know. But this step should go a lot faster than the first step, because you're just highlighting it with the artificial layer, just highlighting the top of the various feathers, and not really diving deeply in to all the different recesses and creases and things like that. And we're going to do the same thing over here on his other side of his head. Just taking a little bit of the Warpstone Glow out of the pot and just, like I said, going over each of the feathers. Alright, so it's time to dive back into the tabletop battlefield discussion. And oh, that's alright. I got a little bit of the warpstone glow here on the mask. Who cares? The mask is going to get like 5 more layers to it. So I would not worry about it if you actually do what I just did there and screw things up. Now this mask behind him that I've already painted up, I don't want to get any paint on that one. The reason why this one behind his head is painted up, I was using it a while ago as my demo for figuring out how I wanted to paint the gold pieces, so I just picked that area and painted it up a while ago. But there we go. You got some nice brighter green highlights on that head. We're doing the same thing for head number 2. Which head number 2 has a little bit more detail to it because not nearly as much of it is covered up by a mask. So you got a little bit more area to cover and have some a little more fun with. But it's the same idea. I'm just looking for the raised areas and I'm hitting it with the warpstone glow. There we go. That's looking pretty good there on that side of the face. Let's jump over to the other one, or the other side. Continue that in just one moment. Let me just bring back up our Tabletop Battlefield list of episodes and see where I'm going from here. Alright, episode 5. This show is filled with useless points. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that episode was useless. In fact, many of the episodes of Tabletop Battlefield were useless, and probably, I don't know if I'd recommend listening to any of the old episodes, but they are entertaining. I'm just not sure if you'll learn anything constructive from any of them. I'm trying to think of any... Okay, some of the build episodes were constructive. Yeah, I would say those could be good. Some of the random episodes, they were of dubious quality. But, you know, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out how all this stuff works and how you actually produce quality shows. But, you know, they could still maybe be fun to listen to, and people still download them. I was looking at some stats a while back. I mean, I think we had like 20,000 downloads since the show ended. That sounds about right. I think that's that's been a number of years, like 5-6 years. But that shows you that people are still, for some reason, downloading old podcast episodes from years and years and years ago. So yes, people are still listening to the Tabletop Battlefield. And you know what? I've never got an email since the show ended about the show, so I don't know if anyone's actually listened to them. They're downloading them, but I have no idea if they're listening to them all the way to the end. Because at the end of every episode, I'd say, you can contact me at jason@roccosoftware.com. And you know what? I've never gotten a comment about the Tabletop Battlefield since the show ended. So, I got a few comments on YouTube videos. Are you making more content? I'm like, well, Christmas episodes. But okay, I'm assuming that was not a review episode. What are we, mechanics and, oh yes, the show of useless points. That's what it was about. That episode was us talking about random fun rule quirks and our favorite mechanics from games. And that was the fun story of the game called War Between the States, Chickamauga and Chattanooga, which is a American Civil War board game where it naturally was about the Chattanooga and Chickamauga campaigns where the Union is battling in the areas of Tennessee. And you can read more about that in any number of fantastic American Civil War historical books, which I do recommend reading. They're fantastic. I love studying about the American Civil War. It's really a fascinating time period in our country. But that's a whole other topic altogether. That'd be kind of fun. I get some people on and talk about stuff like that when painting things. I know people who really know the Civil War. Ideas. Definitely some ideas that'd be fun to do. Anyway, let's get back here to painting Kairos Fateweaver, because I could paint him Civil War miniatures while doing that. Because you know what I've got sitting in here that I haven't bothered to paint up yet? Oh, well, those are British troops. British troops. There we go. Union infantry of some sort. Firing line, Union infantry. So yes, I could paint up Civil War miniatures while having people talk about the American Civil War. But anyway, let's get back to painting Kairos Fateweaver, because that's what I'm doing right now. And frankly, that's what probably most people want to see on these kind of shows. But if you do want me to cover American Civil War stuff, let me know. Alright, so now I'm still working the artificial layer extra small brush with this time the moot green, and I'm just highlighting the tips of some of the feathers. Really putting on as little bit of paint as possible. And then let me go back over here, make sure my dry brush is alright. And then just running over it a little bit with the dry brush to kind of blend in some of that green just a tiny bit. So there you go. You get you get a look kind of like that, where the edges of his feathers have a nice bright green to them. And I'll put a little bit down here too. Now, when doing this process, where you're going between two different brushes, the most important thing to think of is pay attention to where your other brush is. It's not about the actual painting technique, because what I do sometimes, I would paint with this brush, and then I kind of put it between my two fingers like that, and then I use this brush, which if you can see, let me hold out, except I'm holding it there, I got a nice 90-degree cross going there. So as I'm dry brushing, this tip of the brush with paint is going who knows where it's going, and periodically paints little other random miniatures that I got sitting around over here, and that's not good. Not good at all. Alright, continue with some Warpstone Glow. Just put a tiny amount on your brush, and same process, we just want to highlight some of the tips of his feathers. And then have fun with dry brushing. The dry brush just helps blend it into the color below a little bit more, that's all. I'm not even actually having any paint in the dry brush. I'm actually just picking up a little bit from the process of painting that I'm doing. But it's mostly there just to spread the little bit of paint that's there around. Or like that, where it really screw things up, but that's alright. Who cares if you screw up a little bit, you know? Miniature painting is about fun, about painting, about having fun doing it, being creative, and there's a very good likely chance if you're not trying to compete in something, who cares if you screw up just a tiny little bit. Honestly, most people don't sit down and look at your miniature close enough to notice tiny little things like that. I rarely ever have anybody sit down and look at my miniatures in super detail. Most of them look at them from 3 feet away and go, that guy looks awesome. And that's what matters. Make him look awesome from like 3 feet away. Now, trying to paint up miniatures to look really good close up, oh my goodness, is the pain. My Kairos miniatures up here that I need to use for production purposes, like taking photos of, it's just a pain to get miniatures that can look really amazing from like 6 inches away. Even this guy, my Pale Fox here, looks pretty good in camera right now. If you take a nice close-up shot of him, he doesn't look that amazing. It's just, I really need to improve that skill a lot. Which, conveniently, starting Thursday at 8 p.m., I will be assembling and painting up the Aragul Pale Fox, and maybe trying to make him look absolutely fantastic for purposes of photographing him, because I'm going to be building the main Wolf Missile Destroyer variant. Alright, just go a little bit of moot green in here. Just to get a few raised spots, and then dry brush it. And I'm not worrying too much, once again, about, you know, getting paint on the mask and the beak area. That's all going to be more, that's more work of that to come later on. And I think I still have this one side of the head left to do. And the last step for painting these feathers up is going to be adding a bit of an iridescent glow to them. So let's see here. Let's get some highlights thrown down on them. Dry brush comes out, and do your little no paint dry brush and blend them in a little bit, and you get something that looks pretty cool. Same thing down here, a little bit along here, a little bit there. That's all going to become beak, so I'm not worrying too much about that. Very cool. I'm liking that. Alright, so I've got some very nice feathers looking so far on his head. And I'm going to do 2 more steps on the heads tonight. First is going to be giving it some of the iridescent glow that I had talked about. So this is where you take the moot green and mix in some of that Stormhost silver. So putting some moot green down on my palette, cleaning off my brush, and then I'm going to take some Stormhost silver, which is one of the Citadel's very bright silver colors. It's a very bright metallic color, and mix in about 50% Stormhost silver, 50% moot green, and very lightly dry brush that across the feathers. And you dry brush it in the same pattern. So in this case, I'm going to go from top to bottom across all the feathers. So there you go. You can see right there. Actually, you can't really see right there. There's tons of colors. This spot right here, it's a little difficult to see on the camera, but it is definitely a step brighter than the normal moot green around it. And if you just dry brush this as like an edge highlight kind of thing, it does give his feathers a bit of a metallic shimmer, which I think looks pretty cool, seeing that he is, a demon. So very gently now. Just go top to bottom, not much paint, and it's just getting some edge highlighting there. And we're going to do the same thing across all the sides of his head. A little bit more of the color on the brush. And this little technique here, it looks really awesome on his feathers. This is the whole silvery metallic shimmer I've got going across his feathers. It looks really fantastic on the feathers. Alright, so I did that side, that side, that side. I gotta do this side still, and then that will be it. My goodness, yeah, that'll work really well. Alright, the last step for painting his feathers, excuse me, is to add a little bit of a shade to it, just to accentuate some of the depression areas. Now, of course, I've got the Beal-Tan green shade around here, but the only thing about Beal-Tan green is that it's very similar in color to the Caliban base green. So since we already got a whole bunch of the Caliban base green kind of, in the recesses anyway, adding more of that shade isn't going to do a whole lot of good. So I'm going to be working with the non-oil, non-gloss version. So this is going to give me some dark shadows inside the recesses of his feathers. So just taking the artificer layer, extra small brush, only work with a small amount of the shade at any given time, and just very carefully trying to go between his feathers and then get into any of the really deep recesses as well. And this will then give it a very dark, obviously it'll darken the green up a lot, and you'll be able to really see the brighter greens of the feathers stand out, and you'll be able to see some very clear definition between the various feathers and things like that. So it's very carefully getting in between get in between most of the feathers if you can with the non-oil shade. Of course, non-oil shade is one of Games Workshop's shades, which conveniently, in a rather odd fashion, the shades now come in a giant bottle that's twice the size of the old bottles, but they were less than twice the price. Who knows? Games Workshop offering a discount? They actually do offer a lot of discounts now, but there was a time there where discounts on products were few and far between. But some of those new bundles, for like getting started bundles, those are some really good prices on the Warhammer miniatures. And I was looking at one, I know the Seraphim, aka the Lizardman, the now trademarkable Lizardman name, who I have tons of. They have one that's basically you get the giant, you pretty much pay for the giant Carnosaur dude, and you get everybody else with them. So I'm thinking I might actually paint up that giant Carnosaur dude. I don't have that miniature, That would be a good live stream miniature because it's another beautiful, beautiful epic miniature. But at the rate I'm going, I've got a long list of miniatures to get to that I'm going to paint up on this live stream. So we'll see how things go and see what I have time for and those kind of things. Might be a little too much of the non-oil shade right there, but that's alright. See, did I get this side? I did not get this side of the head. So that, okay, so the one head's done. Actually, I get this side of the head, and we can call this part of the painting process done. And I think I'm going to start working on the mask a little bit. And I'll figure out later where the mask beak divisions occur. But just running the non-oil shade into all the recesses. I'm intentionally not running it over the highlights. This is very important to not run it over the highlights because you don't want to darken down the highlights. You're just trying to bring out the shadow depths of the recesses. Alright, that'll look pretty good. Let's just... we can call his head feathers. I think they're pretty well done at this point. I'm quite happy with them. They're matching the iridescent shininess of the rest of his feathers. And I think we're going to start working on the head masks. So, like I said, I'm not entirely sure what's going to be beak and what's not going to be beak yet. So I think at this point I'm going to probably paint more assuming that it's going to be the mask. And I'll go back over later on and really determine where I want the beak to be. Or, you know what, let's actually go ahead, well, yeah, let's get the beak, let's get the nice definition between the beak and the mask sorted out right now. I probably should do that first, because just inevitably, the more layers of paint you put on a miniature, of course, the more you risk of losing detail. It seems kind of crazy, but yes, it's pretty easy to lose detail with these miniatures if you put 7-8 layers of paint on them, especially if I'm going over an area with multiple layers for the golden mask and decide later on, well, this really should be beak. So let me sit down here. I'm bringing out his box art and let's figure out exactly where the beak is on each of these heads. So this head, this one over here, is actually supposed to be on the other side of him apparently, but I don't think it really matters. They both fit on either side, so whatever. Okay, for him, the mask, so the mask really is only this region above his eyes. So starting right here below his eyes and running down and around, this is all beak, I guess. I mean, I think it's beak. It doesn't look, it's kind of strange how it looks because it's still got a goldenish look to it, but it's not like beautiful gold kind of a thing. So I'm pretty sure we're going to call that be all like a beak. So for the beak, I'm going to use the same colors I did here for his claws, which let's start with some more linen white from Reaper. And linen white is one of those paints where you do want to apply in multiple thin coats. So water it down a little bit, and I'm going to apply 2 thin coats to start coloring the beak. And of course, as detail works, I'm still sticking with the artificial layer extra small brush. Alright, so the only thing here that really isn't going to be beak is going to be right here, this bone. I'm going to keep this little bone ridge here. I'm going to keep that as green. And then I'm going to make everything else around here be a beak. And once again, I'm just choosing this beak color because I want to make it very distinct from the rest of the colors in the miniature. So I think, if I look from the top here, I can see where his mask actually ends. The mask ends right about there. So I got a little bit of white paint right there. You can't really see too well from the side where the mask ends, but if you look from the top, of the miniature, you can definitely see where his mask ends and where the beak is going to begin. We can have this go down like that, and then the beak is going to come over here and go under this little ridge, and all the way back up to here. This little ridge here is going to be beak too. And then everything inside is also going to be beak. So let's start painting this in with the linen white. This is some fine detail work here. Did I slop a little bit there? I did. Shoot. Okay. I missed a little bit, so I'm going to have to take some Caliban green over here. You probably can't even see it too well, but you can take some Caliban green over here and fix my little bit of a sloppy mistake. So that can come down here. And then that can be beak. And that'll be beak too then. Very cool. And once again on the other side, I'm just going to keep painting some of this linen white down in order to keep the beak going on. The beak going on. Okay, that's terrible. I'm going to pretend I didn't say that. That's a terrible joke. Awful pun. Let's pretend that never happened, because I'm good with that. Alright, so this is still the beak up here. And once again, it kind of goes up at it's very tough to see from this side. Like I said, look at the top down, and you can definitely see where the mask begins and the beak ends, and then you can easily paint around that by looking from the top down. Go. That's looking pretty good there for what's going to eventually become the bone jaw beak kind of a thing. All right. Very cool. Yeah, like I said, that's the first beak shape there. I think it's standing out really well, so it's going to definitely stand out quite a bit from the rest of the miniature. I like it to give the beak its own little unique look going on there. And it's going to end up having a whole bunch of more layers to it. I'm pretty sure next time on this live stream, I'm going to dive in first into the mouth and the tongue. So let's get the mouth and the tongue done, and then we'll kind of work outward from there. So once the inside the mouth and tongue's done, we can kind of work backwards along, adding the colors to the beak, and then finishing the golden masks. And then probably we'll dive back into doing some more of these skin transitions around here. I think this time I said I was gonna do some scale stuff. Obviously it didn't happen, but you know, I got plenty of more stuff to paint up, because I think so far I've said the feet are done, and that's about it. All right, now on the other head over here, which is this guy, there's a little bit of a golden mask down on the bottom, but most of it is beak. So down here on the other head of Kairos Fateweaver, this area right down here, this is a golden mask. This is a very small raised area, but the rest of it is going to be his beak. So I'm going to very carefully paint around that. And I can't tell from the pictures here on the box art. Does the other side look like it's got a... Yeah, the other side has a very similar little bit of decoration to it. Or is that's head? Oh, okay. No. Oh, crud. I was looking at the wrong head. There's no fancy decoration down here in this on this head. I put my heads on the opposite side of the box art. This down here is supposed to be a bit of a fancy decoration. The area I just made a beak is supposed to be fancy decoration. Oops. Oh well, I'll fix that later. But there isn't really a whole lot of fancy decoration, fancy like armor or whatever this mask, golden mask is wearing is. It's either feathers or beak down here. And the mask starts up here and kind of runs up here, and I'll keep doing a very similar. I think this area up here is also mask. So I'm going to make this. Okay, so that means this area here I'm going to have to go fix with some Caliban green. But I've already got one screw up I got to fix a little bit. So I'll make a note of that. That's the other area I got to fix the Caliban green. Oh, definitely now. I got some white there. But this little doodad here, I'm calling that part of his mask. So I don't want to paint over that. But everything in here is going to eventually become beak. Alright, so this along here is going to be beak too. But this area up here is definitely going to be part of his mask. And then we're going to do a very similar process over here on this side of the head. Alright. So I'm going to need a little bit more linen white down on my palette, but I will see. Hopefully I don't. I don't think I really need to add a second layer of linen white to this. You can see my brush strokes a little bit, but there's a whole lot of more work that goes into the bone shade than just the linen white base. I can probably hide a lot of my brush strokes with some of the other layers and other techniques that I apply to get that bone look. So I'm not going to worry too much about doing another very detailed layer here of Kairos's head, because this beak, trying to trace his beak out is quite annoying, I'm not going to lie. It's a very, very delicate fine maneuver. Comes along here. Just like that. And then just wraps around up here. And then I think I'm going to make 1 box art check again. Ugh. This is the head that has the fancy little doodads. Okay. That kind of is a beakish bone color. So I'm actually going to go and paint this area up here in the actual beak color. I think this area should be a skin tone of some sort, so I need to sort that out. So I'll put some Caliban green in there just to give it a little bit of green color. But this should have a bit of a bone look to it. Okay. There we go. Okay. That's pretty good there in terms of getting the base sections of the beak done. Let me just apply a few tiny dabs of the Caliban green to fix some of my screw-ups. And we're going to call this episode done for the night, because I have to start getting together some fiction for Calidassia. I wrote a whole series of little short stories like well over a year ago, and I never published them. So I'm going to start putting those up because they're all part of the Albion campaign that's kind of going on right now. So I need to take care of that, but let me just put in a little bit of Caliban green in here, because this is actually going to be the green feathers in here. I'll do a little bit of that on the other side as well. So just get his kind of feather color in his little nose region there, and we're going to do the same. Oops, well, the important part is I just covered over brighter green, not anything else. Oops. Oh no, what did I do? Oh no. Ugh. That's embarrassing. Okay, apparently my Stormhost Silver has paint on the side, which then I proceeded to get all over Kairos' leg. Damn it! These stupid paint pots. I must admit, I don't like Games Workshop's paint pots. The paint just gets gunked up on the side, and it comes out all over the place. I much prefer these dropper bottles so much better. I don't know if it's their pigments don't work in a dropper bottle or something, but then this garbage happens. So it's like, okay, well, and it's like very sticky paint too, so I can't just get in there and clean it off. So I am going to be fixing Kairos legs for a while now. Isn't that just wonderful? Just wonderful. I'm now in a very upset, annoyed mood. And yet I'm still laughing about it, because you know what? In the end, it honestly doesn't matter all that much. How your figure looks when everything's all said and done with isn't going to change a whole lot, so there isn't a whole lot of reason to get too upset about it. Okay, it's fixing that little screw up there, and there's a little bit over here where I got some of the linen white that I need to fix up. It's like next time on Painting Kairos Fateweaver, fixing legs. Alright, that'll work. So let's call this episode done at this point. We're making progress. I think I made more steps forward than steps backward thanks to my hands and a crappy GW paint pod. But that's just something to be aware of. You know, I didn't realize that I put my hands in the paint, and now it's like, ugh. Okay. This is really easy to fix here, to be honest with you. It just takes some... Oh, okay, that's different. On the topic of dropper bottles, I mean, my luck, having a dropper bottle fail on me, like, the moment after I was complaining about GW's paint pods, it's like, this is what you get. Alright, just taking some of the desert yellow, I can fix up his legs pretty quickly. Go there. I'm gonna, yeah, we'll fix the gold here in just a moment. So I'm just covering up some of those silver spots with the desert yellow. Fortunately, the desert yellow is a thick paint, which normally can be a problem, but in this case, when I'm fixing up crap, it's actually kind of a blessing. Alright, fix that up. I'm gonna take some of the oak brown, which is also army painter paint, and I'm going to fix up the areas of the scales here, and then I'm just going to apply some wash to it, and it'll look good enough. It'll just look like some weird patch of skin. Maybe that's where a stupid Imperial Guardsman shot him with their las rifle, because they thought it was a demented chicken-cow hybrid thing. And it was the worst change mutation ever, and not a serious threat whatsoever. That's what the regimental standard told me. But if you haven't read the Regimental Standard yet, which is Games Workshop's kind of parody propaganda newspaper for the Human Imperium, oh, it's freaking hilarious. Just search for the Regimental Standard, and it will come up, and it's a good read. It is absolutely fantastic. Especially the included officer footnotes about some of the things. Questions are encouraged. No, they're not. He's no longer alive. Alright, so I just slapped down some color there to fix up my screw-ups. Taking some of the Seraphim Sepia, and we'll just run that over those areas, and it'll be good enough. It'll be good enough patchwork. Like I said, I'm not entering competition. I'm just going to put this guy in a display shelf and forget about him. Because I don't play Demons of Tzeentch. I just want this miniature forever. So I don't need to really make him look super awesome if I don't need to. And in this case, let's just do some quick repair work and move on. But with that, that's definitely about all I'm going to do tonight with painting Kairos Fateweaver. So I want to thank you all for joining me here. I'll have a nice little formal closing in just a moment. I just want to get a little bit of the gold out and fix his little gold knee brace here. He's an old rich guy. He needs an old knee brace, but it's made of gold. Laughing, the guy who's a distance runner who will eventually need like 17 knee braces and knee surgeries. I'm not actually technically a distance runner. I run shorter races, but I sometimes do some longer stuff too. Anyway, there we go. It's a little bit of gold. That was a patchwork to where an Imperial Guardsman shot his knee brace, so he had to get a little bit of a different forged gold in there, right? It's all the narrative. It's all about getting shot by las rifles and not las cans. Those would hurt. Las guns. They're called las guns, and the crappy little things Imperial Guard soldiers carry. Alright then. That's enough of me talking for a while tonight. So with that, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Painting Kairos Fateweaver. Once again, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield and the Kairos universe. And now, once again, I'm still just kind of randomly jumping in to paint Kairos whenever I have a few minutes here and there, or an hour or so. But my regular schedule for painting miniatures is Thursdays at 8 p.m. and that's where I do paint out my Legends of Kairos miniatures. And this week, as I mentioned, I'm going to be starting this guy here, the Pale Fox, but I'm going to be making him as a main wolf missile carrier. But next time, what I'm thinking, because last time what I said I was going to do this time on painting Kairos Fateweaver, I didn't actually do. That's funny. You can see it. That's bad camera positioning. You can see my work camera right here in the main camera. Oops. I'll fix that another time. But what I think I'm going to do next time in painting Kairos Fateweaver, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the golden masks up here. Or no, I was going to do the mouse first, and then kind of work backwards, applying some details to the head. So I kind of start working backwards from that way, and at some point I start working upwards in terms of detail from the legs, and eventually get all the details filled on this guy. There's lots of little doohickeys here and there. I got to go back and do all those eyelet things, so there's still a lot of work to do on him. I'm sure I'm going to have a whole bunch of more stuff to paint up. And if there's another miniature you want to see me paint up after Kairos, feel free to post it in the comments on the YouTube video. If you've made it this long, then awesome. Thank you for watching. Like I said, I think I'm going to be doing both the Reboot Goleman, sure, that sounds good to me, and Cypher, who's two of the miniatures coming out in March, I believe, for the next Gathering Storm book, Rise of the Primarchs. Alright, with that all set, once again, I'm Jason, thank you, and have a good night.